James Park sat in the hospital waiting room with his hands covering his face. The fluorescent lights buzzed above him. The smell of disinfectant filled his nose. He had been sitting there for 3 hours waiting for the doctors to finish their tests on his son. His wife Soo-jin sat beside him, silent and stiff as a statue. Neither of them had spoken in over an hour. James was one of the richest men in the country. He had built his technology company from nothing. He owned 3 mansions, a private jet, and more cars than he could count. People called him a genius. Magazines put his face on their covers. Other businessmen asked for his advice. But none of that mattered now. All his money felt useless in this cold hospital hallway. The door opened. Dr. Chen walked out with a clipboard in his hands. His face was serious. James and Soo-jin jumped to their feet. "Mr. and Mrs. Park," Dr. Chen said. "Please sit down." Those 3 words made James's heart sink. Good news never started with "please sit down." Dr. Chen explained what the tests showed. The car accident 3 weeks ago had done more damage than they first thought. 8-year-old Min-ho had severe cerebral palsy now. The injury to his brain affected how his muscles worked. His legs would not move properly. His arms shook when he tried to use them. The right side of his body was weaker than the left. "Will he walk again?" Soo-jin asked. Her voice cracked. Dr. Chen paused. "It's difficult to say. With intensive therapy, he might regain some movement, but walking independently? I cannot promise that." "I'm sorry." James felt like someone had punched him in the stomach. He could not breathe properly, his son. His bright, energetic son who loved soccer and ran everywhere instead of walking. That boy might never walk again. "What can we do?" James asked. "There must be something. Surgery? Special treatment? Whatever it costs, I'll pay it." Dr. Chen's face softened with sympathy. "Mr. Park, this is not about money. Brain injuries are complicated. We'll start physical therapy immediately. We'll do everything we can. But you need to prepare yourself. Min-ho's life will be very different now." The next few months became a blur of doctor appointments and therapy sessions. James hired the top 5 neurologists in the country. He flew in specialists from Japan, Germany, and America. He built a complete medical therapy center in his mansion, with equipment that most hospitals could not afford. He installed ramps, special bathrooms, and widened all the doorways for a wheelchair. Min-ho came home from the hospital in a custom wheelchair that cost more than most people's cars. The boy who used to run through the house now sat silent and still. His eyes looked empty. He barely spoke anymore. James hired 6 different physical therapists. Each one came with impressive credentials and high prices. They worked with Min-ho every day, trying to help him move his legs, strengthen his muscles, and regain control of his body. But Min-ho would not cooperate. When the therapist tried to move his legs, he screamed at them to stop. When they encouraged him to try exercises, he turned his wheelchair away. When they praised small movements, he glared at them with anger in his eyes. "He's being difficult," the first therapist said after 2 weeks. "He needs to want to get better." The second therapist lasted 3 weeks before quitting. "I cannot help someone who refuses to be helped," she explained. The third, fourth, and fifth therapists all said similar things. Min-ho was too angry, too stubborn, too depressed. They suggested psychiatrists and medications. They said he needed time to accept his new reality. James grew desperate. He spent hours researching online looking for miracle treatments. He contacted experimental programs in other countries. He offered to donate millions to research if they would focus on cerebral palsy. He tried everything money could buy, but money could not fix this. James began to realize that with growing horror, his marriage started falling apart. Soo-jin blamed herself for the accident. She had been driving that day when the drunk driver hit them. Min-ho had been in the back seat. Soo-jin walked away with minor injuries. Min-ho did not. "I should have seen him coming," Soo-jin said over and over. "I should have driven a different route. I should have left the house 5 minutes later." James tried to comfort her, but he was drowning in his own guilt and frustration. He worked 18-hour days at his company, then spent his evenings in Min-ho's therapy room watching his son refuse to participate. He barely slept. He lost weight. His assistant said he looked 10 years older. Soo-jin moved into the guest bedroom. Then she moved to their second house across town. Their conversations became shorter and colder. 6 months after the accident, she filed for divorce. James did not fight it. He was too tired. He agreed to everything she asked for. He only wanted custody of Min-ho, and Soo-jin did not argue. She said she could not look at their son without being reminded of what she had done. The guilt was eating her alive. So James was left alone in his mansion with his disabled son who hated him. Minho barely spoke to his father anymore. When James entered his room, Minho would turn his wheelchair to face the wall. When James tried to talk about therapy or doctors, Minho would put his hands over his ears. The house felt empty despite having 12 bedrooms and 20 staff members. James would walk through the halls late at night, unable to sleep. He would stand outside Minho's door and listen to his son cry, but when he knocked and asked to come in, Minho would yell at him to go away. James had never felt so helpless in his entire life. He had built a billion-dollar company through determination and intelligence. He had solved complex problems that stumped other people. He had made his fortune by finding solutions where others saw only obstacles. But he could not solve this. He could not fix his son. He could not buy back what the accident had taken. All his money, all his success, all his power meant nothing here. One night, James sat alone in Minho's empty therapy room. The expensive equipment stood silent and unused. The special mats lay flat and untouched. The parallel bars that cost $30,000 gathered dust. He put his head in his hands and cried for the first time since the accident. He cried for his son who had lost so much. He cried for his failed marriage. He cried for his own helplessness. He cried because he finally understood that some problems could not be solved with money and willpower alone. His son needed something James did not know how to give. Minho needed hope. He needed someone who could reach past the anger and pain. He needed someone who could help him want to live again, not just survive. James had no idea how to be that person. He had spent his whole life building and achieving and succeeding. He had never learned how to simply be present with someone in their pain. He did not know how to help someone heal when they did not want to heal. The mansion felt like a prison. The therapy equipment felt like monuments to his failure. Every day felt the same. Minho growing more isolated, James growing more desperate, both of them trapped in a situation that money could not fix and willpower could not change. James knew something had to change, but he had no idea what. He had tried everything he could think of. He had spent millions. He had hired the best professionals. He had researched every possible treatment. Nothing worked. Nothing helped. Nothing got through to his son. James sat in that therapy room until dawn, watching the sun rise through the window. He had never felt so lost in his entire life. He had built an empire, but he could not reach his own son. He had everything the world said mattered, but none of it could help him now. He did not know that the answer would come from the most unexpected place. He did not know that help would arrive in a form he never would have imagined. He did not know that sometimes the greatest solutions come wrapped in the humblest packages. All he knew was that he was failing his son. And he did not know how to stop failing. James sat at his desk on a Tuesday afternoon, staring at a stack of job applications. His assistant had placed them there that morning. He had advertised for a new physical therapist 2 weeks ago after the last one quit. The 6th therapist in 8 months. He flipped through the applications without much interest. They all looked the same. Impressive degrees from expensive universities. Lists of certifications and specialized training. References from hospitals and rehabilitation centers. Professional photos attached to professional resumes. Then he found an envelope at the bottom of the stack. It was not part of the official applications. Someone had dropped it at the front gate and security had included it with the other mail. The envelope was plain and slightly wrinkled as if it had been carried in someone's purse for a few days. James almost threw it away. But something made him open it. Inside was a handwritten letter on regular notebook paper. The handwriting was neat but simple. There was no resume, no list of qualifications, no professional photograph. The letter started with an apology. The writer knew she had no right to apply for a job that was not advertised the way she was applying. But she had seen Minho at the hospital 6 weeks ago during one of his checkup appointments. She had been there visiting her neighbor who was recovering from a stroke. She wrote that she saw a young boy in a wheelchair, angry and alone, while his father argued with doctors in the hallway. She saw the pain in the boy's eyes. She saw how he pulled away when people tried to help him. She said something in her heart told her she needed to meet this child. She needed to try to help him. Her name was Hana Kim. She was 52 years old. She had no medical degree or therapy certification. She had worked in a garment factory for 20 years. She had raised 3 children by herself after her husband died in a construction accident. Her children were grown now. She had time. She had experience with pain and struggle. She had a heart that wanted to help. James read the letter twice. His first thought was to throw it away. This woman had no qualifications. She was not a professional. What could she possibly offer that 6 trained therapists could not? But something in her words stuck with him. She wrote about seeing Minho's pain, not his disability. She wrote about wanting to know him, not fix him. She did not promise results or guaranteed outcomes. She just said she felt called to try. James looked at the pile of professional applications on his desk. Then he looked at Hannah's simple letter again. Against every logical thought in his head, he picked up his phone and called the number she had written at the bottom of the page. Hannah answered on the 3rd ring. Her voice was warm but nervous. "Mrs. Kim, this is James Park. You sent me a letter about my son." There was silence. Then Hannah spoke quickly, apologizing. She said she knew it was inappropriate. She should not have written. She would understand if he was angry. She just could not stop thinking about that boy in the wheelchair. James surprised himself by asking her to come for an interview the next day. When Hannah arrived at the mansion, the security guard at the gate was skeptical. She drove an old car that made strange noises. She wore a plain dress and carried a worn purse. She did not look like someone who belonged in a neighborhood where houses cost millions. James met her in his office. His assistant and head of household staff sat with him. They had both advised against this interview. They thought James was wasting his time. Hannah sat in the chair across from James and folded her hands in her lap. She looked around the office with wide eyes. She had never been in a place like this before. Everything was expensive and elegant. She felt small and out of place. James asked her about her experience. Hannah was honest. She had no medical training. She had never worked as a caregiver professionally, but she had cared for her dying mother for 2 years. She had raised 3 children alone while working 2 jobs. Her youngest son had severe learning disabilities, and the schools wanted to put him in a special program. She refused. She worked with him every night for years. He graduated high school and now worked as a mechanic. "Why do you think you can help my son?" James asked. Hannah thought carefully before answering. "I do not know if I can help him walk again. I am not a doctor. But I know about pain. I know what it feels like when life takes something from you that you cannot get back. I know how angry that makes you. How hopeless. Your son needs someone who understands that anger. Someone who will not be afraid of it or try to talk him out of it. Someone who will just sit with him in it until he is ready to find his way out." James's assistant shook her head slightly. This woman was talking about emotions, not treatment. They needed someone with skills and training, but James kept listening. There was something in Hannah's words that resonated with him, something real and honest that all the professional therapists had lacked. "My son refuses to cooperate with therapy," James said. "He yells at anyone who tries to help him. He will not do the exercises." "How would you handle that?" Hannah smiled sadly. "I would not force him. If someone tried to force you to accept something you were not ready to accept, would you cooperate? Or would you fight them?" James had no answer to that. Every therapist had tried to force Minho to participate. They pushed and encouraged and insisted, and Minho pushed back harder every time. "What would you do instead?" James asked. "I would sit with him. Talk to him. Ask him about his life before the accident. What he liked. What he misses. I would tell him about my own losses. My husband dying. My son struggling in school. Everyone said I should accept it. Everyone had advice. But what I needed was someone to just listen. To let me be angry. To not tell me it would get better until I was ready to believe it might." The assistant and head of staff exchanged glances. This was not standard therapy practice. This was not what professionals did. But James found himself nodding. In 8 months, no one had tried this approach. Everyone had focused on Minho's body. No one had focused on his heart. "I will hire you for a trial period," James said. His assistant started to protest, but James held up his hand. 1 month. If my son responds to you, you can stay. If not, we go back to looking for a traditional therapist." Hannah's eyes filled with tears. She thanked him over and over. James gave her instructions. She would come every day from 9 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. She would spend time with Minho. She could try therapy if he was willing, but that was not the main goal. The main goal was simply to connect with him. James offered her the same salary he had paid the other therapists. Hannah's eyes went wide. It was more money than she had ever made in a month at the factory. She tried to say it was too much, but James insisted. Hannah started the next Monday. James watched from his office window as her old car pulled up to the mansion. She got out carrying a small bag. She looked nervous as she walked to the front door. The head of staff led her to Minho's room. James followed at a distance, curious despite his doubts. Minho sat in his wheelchair facing the window. He did not turn around when they entered. "Minho, this is Mrs. Kim. She is going to spend time with you," the head of staff announced. Minho said nothing. He did not move. This was his usual response to new therapists. Hannah thanked the staff member and waited until they were alone. Then she pulled a chair close to Minho's wheelchair and sat down. She did not try to position herself in front of him. She sat beside him, looking out the same window. For 10 minutes, neither of them spoke. James watched from the doorway, hidden from view. He expected Hannah to start talking, to try to engage Minho, to do something. But she just sat there, quiet and patient, looking at the same view Minho was looking at. Finally, Minho turned his head slightly. "Why are you here?" His voice was harsh and angry. It was the most he had said to anyone new in months. Hannah did not smile or try to sound cheerful. She answered honestly, "Because I saw you at the hospital. You looked like I felt when my husband died. Angry at the world, angry at God, angry at yourself. I thought maybe you needed someone who understands that kind of anger." Minho stared at her. "You do not understand anything. Your husband died. That's different." "You can still walk," Hannah nodded. "You are right. I can walk. But I lost something too. I lost my future. All the plans we made, all the dreams we had. Gone in 1 second because a brick fell off a building onto my husband's head. 1 second. That is all it took to destroy everything." Minho's expression softened slightly. Just slightly. But James saw it from the doorway. It was the first crack in the wall Minho had built around himself. "I cannot walk," Minho said quietly. "I used to play soccer. I was fast. Now I cannot even stand up by myself." "That must make you so angry," Hannah said. Not as a question, as a statement. "Everyone tells me I should try harder, that I should be grateful I am alive, that I should be positive." Minho's voice broke. "But I do not feel grateful. I feel angry. All the time." Hannah reached out and took Minho's hand. He did not pull away. "Then be angry. You have a right to be angry. Something terrible happened to you. You lost something important. Be as angry as you need to be." James felt his throat tighten. In 8 months, no one had given Minho permission to be angry. Everyone had tried to redirect his feelings, manage his emotions, encourage positivity. No one had simply acknowledged that his anger was valid. Minho and Hannah sat together for the rest of the hour, talking occasionally but mostly sitting in comfortable silence. When Hannah left, she promised to come back tomorrow. Minho nodded. James stopped Hannah in the hallway. "What was that?" he asked. Hannah smiled. "That was the beginning. He needed to know someone sees his pain, not his disability. His pain, now he knows. Tomorrow we will sit together again. And the next day, and the next, and slowly he will start to trust me. And when he trusts me, he will start to believe that maybe, just maybe, there is a reason to try again." James watched her walk down the hallway and out of his house. His head of staff approached him, shaking her head. "Sir, she did not do any therapy. She just sat there." "I know," James said. But for the first time in 8 months, he felt a small spark of hope. Maybe money and credentials were not what his son needed. Maybe he needed something simpler and harder to find. Maybe he needed someone who saw him as a person, not a problem to solve. 3 weeks passed. James watched Hannah and Minho carefully every day. He expected his son to return to his angry, resistant self. He expected Hannah to give up like everyone else. But neither of those things happened. Instead, something small and beautiful began to grow. Hannah came every morning at exactly 9 o'clock. Her old car became a familiar sight to the security guards. They started waving at her. The household staff stopped questioning her presence. Even James's assistant, who had doubted her from the beginning, started to notice changes. The first week, Hannah and Minho just talked. She told him stories about her life, about growing up poor in a small village, about meeting her husband at a bus stop, about the day he died and how she thought she would die too from the grief, about her 3 children and how hard it was to raise them alone. Minho listened. At first he pretended not to care. But James saw how his son leaned forward when Hana spoke, how he asked questions, how he forgot to be angry when he was caught up in her stories. Hana asked Minho questions too. What was his favorite subject in school before the accident? What games did he like to play? What did he dream about at night? She did not ask about his therapy or his progress or his disability. She asked about him as a person. I wanted to be a soccer player, Minho told her one day. A professional one. I was the fastest on my team. Hana did not say what everyone else said. She did not tell him there were other dreams he could have now. She did not try to redirect his sadness to something more positive. Instead, she said, "Tell me about your best game." Minho's face lit up. He talked for 30 minutes about a championship match where he scored the winning goal. He described running down the field, the crowd cheering, his teammates celebrating. As he talked, he forgot about his wheelchair. He forgot about his disability. He was just a boy remembering a happy moment. Hana listened to every word. When Minho finished, his eyes were wet with tears. I miss it so much, he whispered. I know, Hana said. And it is okay to miss it. It is okay to grieve for what you lost. The second week, Hana started bringing things with her, small things. A photo album of her children, a ball of yarn and knitting needles, a deck of cards. She never brought therapy equipment or medical supplies. She brought pieces of normal life. One day she brought cookies she had baked. She put them on a table across the room just slightly out of Minho's reach from his wheelchair. I made these last night, she said. My secret recipe, but I am too full from breakfast. Would you like one? Minho looked at the cookies, then at Hana. They are too far away. Hana smiled. That is true. What should we do about that? Minho understood what she was doing. Any other therapist would have pushed his wheelchair to the table or brought the cookies to him. Then they would have turned it into a lesson about asking for help or accepting his limitations. But Hana just waited. No pressure, no expectations, just a plate of cookies and a question hanging in the air. Minho stared at the cookies for a long time. Then he reached down and grabbed the wheels of his chair. Slowly, with effort, he pushed himself forward, 6 inches, then 6 more, then another 6. It took him 5 minutes to cross 10 feet. But he did it himself. When he reached the table, he was breathing hard. But he was also smiling. Just a small smile. The first real smile James had seen on his son's face in 8 months. Hana handed him a cookie. These are better when you work for them, she said. From his office, James wiped his eyes. That was the smartest therapy he had ever seen, and it did not feel like therapy at all. It felt like living. The third week, Hana started turning everything into gentle challenges. She would drop her pen and ask Minho if he could reach it. She would place a puzzle on a low table and wonder aloud if he might help her solve it. She would start folding paper airplanes and suggest they have a contest to see whose could fly farther. Each activity required Minho to move, reach, stretch, or strengthen his muscles. But it never felt like exercise. It felt like games between friends. Minho stopped resisting. He started trying. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Hana praised his efforts, but not in the exaggerated way the other therapists had. She did not make a big celebration when he picked up the pen or folded a paper airplane. She just smiled and said, "Thank you," or, "That is better than mine." She treated his small achievements as normal, not miraculous. And somehow that made Minho want to achieve more. One afternoon, James heard laughter coming from Minho's room. Real laughter. He walked down the hallway and peeked inside. Hana was teaching Minho a simple card game. They sat at a low table. Minho had moved from his wheelchair to a regular chair so he could reach the cards better. Hana had not told him to do it. He had done it himself because he wanted to play the game. James's heart felt like it might burst. His son had not transferred from his wheelchair in months. The therapist had tried to get him to practice transfers every day and he always refused. Now he was doing it without even thinking about it, just because he wanted to play cards with Hana. That night at dinner, Minho spoke to James for the first time in weeks. "Auntie Hana is nice," he said quietly. James smiled. "I like her too. Can she come tomorrow?" Minho asked. "She comes every day," James said. Minho nodded and ate another bite of food. Then he added, I moved my chair today by myself to get cookies. James wanted to jump up and celebrate. He wanted to call everyone he knew and tell them the good news. But he followed Hana's example. He just smiled and said, "That is good." "Did the cookies taste better because you worked for them?" Minho thought about it and nodded. "Yeah, they did." By the 4th week, Minho was asking when Hana would arrive each morning. He started caring about things again. He asked the cook to make certain foods for lunch because he wanted to share them with Hana. He started brushing his own hair and changing his own shirt instead of waiting for staff to help him. He wanted to look nice when Auntie Hana came. Hana began integrating the therapy exercises the doctors had prescribed, but she did it in clever ways. She would suggest they water the garden together, which required Minho to use his arms and core strength. She would challenge him to help her rearrange furniture, which made him practice weight-bearing and balance. She would ask him to help her carry things, knowing he would have to build strength to do it. Minho never realized he was doing therapy. He thought he was just helping his friend, and that made all the difference. One day, the official physical therapist came for Minho's monthly evaluation. She was amazed at his progress. His muscle tone had improved. His range of motion was better. He was attempting movements he had refused to try before. "What changed?" she asked James. James pointed to Hana, who was sitting with Minho across the room showing him how to fold origami cranes. "She changed everything." The therapist looked confused. "But she has no training. No credentials. What is she doing differently?" James thought about how to explain it. "She is not treating his disability. She is treating his heart. Once his heart started to heal, his body followed." The therapist shook her head. "That is not how it works. Progress comes from structured therapy, from pushing patients to try new things." But James saw the truth in front of him. Minho was trying new things. He was pushing himself. But he was doing it because someone had given him a reason to try. Someone had made him feel like a person worth fighting for. Hana never talked about Minho's progress. She never pointed out how much he was improving, or reminded him of goals he needed to reach. She just showed up every day, brought her gentle challenges, told her stories, and treated him like a friend instead of a patient. One afternoon, James found Hana in the kitchen making lunch with Minho. His son was sitting at the counter, carefully spreading peanut butter on bread. His hands shook with the effort, but he was doing it. 6 months ago, Minho could barely hold a spoon. Now he was making his own sandwich. "Auntie Hana says everyone should know how to make their own food," Minho explained. "It is an important life skill." Hana winked at James. She knew exactly what she was doing. She was not teaching Minho to spread peanut butter. She was teaching him independence. She was giving him back his dignity. James pulled Hana aside later that day. "I want to pay you more. What you are doing for my son, it is priceless." Hana shook her head. "Mr. Park, you are already paying me more than I need. I am not doing this for money. I am doing this because your son needed someone who sees him, really sees him. Not his wheelchair, not his disability, just him, Minho, a smart, funny, wonderful boy who had something terrible happen to him. But you have given him so much," James insisted. "You have given him hope. You have given him his life back." Hana smiled. "I have not given him anything, Mr. Park. I have just reminded him that he still has a life worth living. The hope was always inside him. It was just buried under anger and pain. All I did was sit with him until he was ready to find it again." James felt tears in his eyes. This woman, with no degrees and no training, had accomplished what 6 highly qualified therapists could not. She had reached his son. She had brought light back into their dark house. "How did you know this would work?" James asked. Hana thought for a moment. "When my husband died, people kept telling me to move on, to be strong, to think positive, but I could not do those things. I was drowning in grief. What saved me was my neighbor, Mrs. Lee. She did not tell me to move on. She just sat with me. She brought me soup. She let me cry. She did not try to fix me or rush me. She just gave me space to be broken until I was ready to put myself back together. I did the same for Minho. I gave him space to be broken. And now he is starting to put himself back together. But in his own time, in his own way." James understood. He had been so focused on fixing his son quickly that he had forgotten his son needed time to grieve, time to be angry, time to accept what had happened before he could move forward. That night, James watched Minho and Hana through the window. They were in the garden. Hana was walking slowly and Minho was following in his wheelchair. But every few feet, Minho would try to stand up, holding onto the wheelchair handles for support. Hana never told him to try. She never encouraged him or pushed him. She just walked slowly enough that he felt safe trying. James realized he was watching a miracle, not the kind of miracle he had been praying for. Not a sudden cure or a medical breakthrough. A smaller, quieter miracle. The miracle of a broken heart learning to beat again. The miracle of hope returning after despair. The miracle of a simple woman with a generous heart, changing a young boy's entire world. And it had all started with Hana just sitting beside his son and giving him permission to be angry. From that small beginning, everything else had grown. 2 years passed.
James could hardly believe how much had changed.
The dark, silent mansion had slowly transformed into a home filled with laughter and life again. And at the center of that transformation was Hana, who came every single day without fail. Minho was 10 years old now. He had grown taller, stronger, and most importantly, happier. The angry, broken boy who had pushed everyone away was gone. In his place was a child who smiled, who tried new things, who believed in himself again. The morning that changed everything started like any other morning. Hana arrived at 9 o'clock. Minho was waiting for her in the therapy room, which no longer felt like a medical facility. Hana had decorated it with plants, pictures, and comfortable furniture. It looked more like a living room than a rehabilitation center. "Good morning, Auntie Hana," Minho called out. His voice was bright and cheerful. "Good morning, Minho. Are you ready to work hard today?" Hana asked, setting down her bag. Minho nodded eagerly. Over 2 years, Hana had gradually introduced more structured therapy into their routine. But she did it in ways that felt natural. She never forced him. She never made it feel like medical treatment. Every exercise was disguised as an adventure or a game or a challenge. That morning, they worked on standing exercises using parallel bars. These bars had gathered dust for 8 months before Hana arrived. Now Minho used them every day. He wore leg braces that helped support his weight. Slowly, carefully, he pulled himself up from his wheelchair. Hana stood nearby but did not help unless he asked. She had taught him that asking for help was not weakness. It was wisdom. But she also gave him space to try things independently. Minho gripped the bars tightly. His arms shook with effort. His legs wobbled in the braces. But he stood up. He had been practicing this for months. Each week he got a little stronger. Each week he could stand a little longer. 5 seconds, Hana said, watching the clock. 6, 7, 8. Minho's face was red with effort, but he did not give up. He had learned determination from Hana, who never gave up on him even when he wanted to give up on himself. 15 seconds. That is your new record. Hana smiled. Minho lowered himself back into the wheelchair, breathing hard but grinning. "Did you see? I beat my old time, I saw. I am very proud of you." After a short rest, they tried something new. Hana had been working toward this moment for weeks, but she had not told Minho. She did not want to pressure him or make him nervous. "Minho, I have an idea. Instead of holding the bars, what if you held onto my arm? We could try walking a few steps together." Minho's smile faded. "Walk? Like really walk?" "Just a few steps. I will be right here. If your legs get tired, we stop. No pressure. Just trying." Minho looked uncertain. Walking felt like a huge goal. An impossible goal. He could stand now. He could take tiny steps while holding the bars. But actually walking, even with help, felt scary. Hana saw his fear. She sat down beside his wheelchair. "Do you remember 2 years ago when I asked if you could move your chair to reach the cookies?" Minho nodded. "You were scared then too. You did not think you could do it. But you tried anyway, and you did it. Maybe this is another cookie moment. Maybe you can do more than you think." Minho took a deep breath. "Okay, I will try." Hana helped him stand again. This time, instead of gripping the parallel bars, Minho held on to Hana's arm with his left hand. He held a cane in his right hand. His legs, supported by the braces, trembled beneath him. "1 step," Hana said gently. "Just one." "Move your right foot forward." Minho concentrated hard. He shifted his weight. His right foot in its brace slid forward a few inches. It was not a normal step. It was slow and awkward. But it was a step, good. Now the left foot. Minho moved his left foot forward. Another slow, shaky step. He had walked 2 steps. 2 steps that felt like climbing a mountain. Do you want to try one more? Hana asked. Minho nodded. He took a 3rd step, then a 4th. By the 5th step, his legs were shaking so badly that Hana could feel him losing strength. That is enough for today. You did amazing, she said, helping him back to his wheelchair. Minho collapsed into the chair, exhausted but thrilled. I walked. I actually walked. You did. 5 whole steps, and can we tell my dad? Minho asked excitedly. Of course. This is big news. James was in his office when Minho burst in with Hana pushing his wheelchair behind him. James looked up from his computer, surprised by the interruption. Dad!
Dad, I walked!
I walked 5 steps. Minho was practically bouncing in his chair. James felt his heart stop. You what? I held Auntie Hana's arm in my cane and I walked. 5 steps. By myself. Minho's face glowed with pride and excitement. James looked at Hana, who nodded with tears in her eyes. Then he looked back at his son. The boy the doctor said might never walk again had just taken 5 steps. James fell to his knees beside Minho's wheelchair and hugged him tight. He could not speak. Tears poured down his face. 2 years of hope and work and small victories had led to this moment. His son had walked. I am so proud of you, James finally managed to say. So incredibly proud. Auntie Hana says if I keep practicing, maybe I can walk even more. Maybe I can walk to the kitchen. Or to the garden. Minho's words tumbled out fast with excitement. James pulled Hana into the hug too. The 3 of them stood there, or rather sat there, crying and laughing and celebrating together. The household staff heard the commotion and came running. When they heard the news, they started crying too. The cook brought out a special cake. The gardener brought flowers. Everyone wanted to celebrate Minho's achievement. The mansion, which had felt like a tomb for so long, felt alive with joy. That evening, James called his ex-wife, Soo Jin. They had barely spoken in 2 years. Their divorce had been finalized 18 months ago. Soo Jin had moved to a different city, unable to face the guilt of what the accident had done to their son. Soo Jin, it is James. I have news about Minho. There was a long pause. Is he okay? Did something happen? He walked today. 5 steps. He actually walked. Soo Jin did not respond at first. Then James heard her start to cry. He walked? Minho walked? Yes, with help and leg braces. But he did it. The doctor said it might not be possible, but he did it. How? Soo Jin asked. What changed? Hana changed everything. She is Minho's caregiver. She has been working with him for 2 years. She helped him believe in himself again. Soo Jin was quiet for a moment. Can I come see him? I know I have no right to ask. I left. I was a coward. But I want to see my son. I want to tell him how proud I am. James thought about it. He was angry at Soo Jin for leaving. But he knew Minho missed his mother, even though the boy rarely mentioned her. Come this weekend. Minho will be happy to see you. That Saturday, Soo Jin drove up to the mansion. James watched from the window as she got out of her car. She looked older, thinner. Guilt had eaten away at her for 2 years. Minho was nervous when he heard his mother was coming. Does she still blame herself? He asked Hana. Hana had met Soo Jin once briefly 2 years ago. She understood the depth of the woman's guilt. Yes, I think she does. But maybe seeing you happy and strong will help her forgive herself. When Soo Jin entered the house, she stopped and stared at Minho. The last time she had seen him, he was 8 years old, angry and broken in a wheelchair. Now he was 10, smiling and confident. Still in a wheelchair, but everything about him was different. Hi, Mom, Minho said quietly. Soo Jin ran to him and dropped to her knees, hugging him and crying. I am so sorry. I am so sorry I left. I am so sorry about everything. Minho hugged her back. It is okay, Mom, I understand. No, it is not okay. I should have been here. I should have helped you. Instead, I ran away like a coward. Hana stepped forward gently. Mrs. Park, what matters is that you are here now, and your son has something amazing to show you. Minho smiled. Do you want to see me walk? Soo Jin's eyes went wide. Walk? You can walk? A little bit, with help. But I am getting better every day. They went to the therapy room. Hana helped Minho stand using the parallel bars. Soo Jin watched with her hands covering her mouth. Then Hana stood beside Minho, offering her arm. Minho took it along with his cane. Slowly, carefully, he took 1 step. Then another. Then another. He managed 7 steps before his legs got tired.
It was more than he had done before.
Maybe it was because his mother was watching. Maybe he wanted to show her he was okay. Sujin completely broke down. She sobbed so hard her whole body shook. My baby, my sweet baby. You did it. You really did it. After Minho sat back down, Sujin turned to Hana. You did this. You helped my son when I could not, when I was too weak and too guilty. You stayed and fought for him. Hana shook her head. I just reminded him who he was. The strength was always inside him. He just needed someone to help him find it again. Sujin took Hana's hands. Thank you. Thank you for giving my son his life back. Thank you for being there when I was not. Thank you for not giving up on him. Hana squeezed her hands. Your son is remarkable. He has worked so hard. He has been so brave. You should be very proud. That night, Sujin, James, Minho, and Hana had dinner together. It was awkward at first. Sujin and James had not been in the same room in over a year. But Minho's joy and excitement broke through the tension. He told his mother about all his progress, about learning to make his own sandwiches, about playing card games, about practicing standing exercises every day. And Auntie Hana tells me stories, Minho said, about her life and her children. She makes everything fun. Even therapy does not feel like therapy. Sujin looked at Hana with such gratitude and respect. This ordinary woman with no special training had done what teams of doctors and therapists could not. She had reached into the darkness where Minho was drowning and pulled him back into the light. As they ate dessert, James watched his son laugh at something Hana said. He watched his ex-wife smile for the first time in years. He looked at Hana, who had refused every bonus and gift he had tried to give her. She claimed she was just doing her job. But James knew better. Hana had given them a miracle. Not the dramatic instant miracle James had once prayed for. A better miracle. The miracle of patient love. The miracle of showing up every single day. The miracle of believing in someone when they did not believe in themselves. James knew he could never repay Hana for what she had done. She would not accept money. She would not accept gifts. She lived in a small apartment and drove an old car and said she had everything she needed. But James was a wealthy man with resources and connections. And he was starting to form an idea, a way to honor Hana that she could not refuse. A way to make sure her gift to his son could reach other families who needed the same kind of hope. He did not tell anyone about his plan yet, but in his mind, he was already designing something special, something that would show Hana and the world what one person with a generous heart could accomplish, something that would make sure her legacy lasted far beyond her time with Minho. As James watched Hana help Minho to his bedroom that night, he smiled to himself. Hana had no idea what was coming, but James was going to make sure everyone knew her name. He was going to make sure everyone understood that sometimes the greatest strength comes wrapped in the humblest packages, and he was going to build something beautiful to honor the woman who had saved his son's life. James sat in his private office late one night, 3 months after Minho had taken his first steps. The house was quiet. Minho was asleep. Hana had gone home hours ago. This was when James did his best thinking. He opened his laptop and began researching. He wanted to do something meaningful for Hana, but he knew she would refuse any personal gift. She had already turned down 5 attempts to give her bonuses. She refused the new car he tried to buy her. She would not accept the vacation package to Hawaii. She even refused when he offered to pay off her apartment rent for a year. I have everything I need, she always said. Your son's progress is my reward. But James felt that was not enough. Hana had transformed his son's life. She had brought joy back to their home. She had shown him that money could not buy what really mattered. And she had done it all for a modest salary that she probably spent on her own family anyway. James needed to find a way to honor her that she could not refuse. Something that was not about her personally, but about the values she represented. Something that would help others the way she had helped Minho. He started researching Hana's neighborhood. She lived in a poor area across the city. The apartment buildings were old and crowded. The schools were underfunded. Many families struggled to make ends meet. There were few community resources or support systems. James drove there one afternoon, not telling Hana he was coming. He wanted to see where she lived, to understand her world better. He parked his expensive car on a street where most people walked or took buses. People stared at him. He clearly did not belong there. He walked around the neighborhood observing. He saw children playing in the street because there was no safe playground. He saw elderly people sitting on stoops with nowhere else to go. He saw young parents looking tired and overwhelmed. He saw the kind of struggle that money could ease but could not eliminate. Then he spoke to people. He introduced himself as a businessman interested in the community. He asked what they needed most. The answers came quickly and consistently. "We need a place for our kids to go after school," one mother said. "Somewhere safe where they can do homework and play." "We need job training," a young man told him. "I want to work, but I do not have skills that employers want." An elderly woman added, "We need support groups. My grandson has a disability and I am raising him alone. I do not know what I am doing. I need help." James listened to story after story. He heard about families with disabled children who could not afford therapy. He heard about parents working 3 jobs who had no time to help their kids with school. He heard about elderly people who were lonely and isolated. He heard about young people who had potential but no opportunities, and he realized exactly what he needed to do. James went back to Hannah and asked her a simple question. "If you could change one thing about your neighborhood, what would it be?" Hannah looked surprised by the question. She thought for a moment. "I would create a place where people could go for help. Not just one kind of help, but all kinds. A place where parents could get support raising their children. Where people could learn new skills. Where families with disabled children could find hope. A place that treats everyone with dignity, no matter how poor or struggling they are." "Has anyone ever tried to create a place like that?" James asked. Hannah laughed sadly. "Places like that cost money. Our neighborhood has no money. We barely have a working community center and it is only open 2 days a week." James nodded, keeping his expression neutral. But inside, his plan was taking shape. He knew exactly what he was going to do. Over the next 6 months, James worked in secret. He used his business connections and personal wealth to begin a project that would change Hannah's neighborhood forever. But he told no one, especially not Hannah. He wanted it to be a complete surprise. First, he purchased a large empty lot in the center of Hannah's neighborhood. It had once been a factory that closed down years ago. The building had been demolished, leaving just empty land. James bought it through a shell company so his name would not appear on any documents. He did not want Hannah to find out. Then he hired architects, but not the fancy ones who designed his mansions. He hired architects who specialized in community spaces. People who understood that buildings should serve people, not impress them. He told them exactly what he wanted. "I want a community center that feels warm and welcoming, not institutional, not cold. I want it to feel like home. I want spaces for children, for families, for elderly people, for people with disabilities. I want classrooms and support group rooms and a playground and a quiet garden. I want it to be beautiful but not intimidating. I want people to feel like they belong there." The architects designed something remarkable, a 2-story building with large windows and natural light, bright colors and comfortable furniture, ramps and elevators for people with disabilities, a commercial kitchen for cooking classes, computer labs for job training, quiet rooms for counseling and support groups, a library filled with books, an indoor gym and an outdoor playground. But James did not stop there. He established an endowment fund that would pay for the center's operations forever. He set up scholarship programs for neighborhood children to attend college. He hired social workers, teachers, and therapists to staff the center. He created free programs, after-school tutoring, job training, parenting classes, support groups for families with disabled children, activities for elderly residents. He thought about Hannah's philosophy. She always said people needed to be treated with dignity. They needed to be seen as whole people, not just their problems. So James made sure every program at the center followed that philosophy. No one would be judged or shamed. Everyone would be welcomed and valued. The centerpiece of James's plan was something special. He commissioned a bronze statue from a renowned sculptor. He gave the sculptor photographs of Hannah and Minho. He described how Hannah would sit with Minho, how she would kneel beside his wheelchair, how she would extend her hand in encouragement and support. The sculptor created something beautiful, a life-size bronze statue of Hannah kneeling beside a child in a wheelchair. Her hand was extended, not pulling or pushing, but offering. The child's face looked up at her with trust and hope. The statue captured Hannah's entire philosophy in one frozen moment: patience, dignity, love. James had a plaque made for the base of the statue. It read, "Hannah Kim, who taught us that the greatest miracles come from the simplest acts of love. This center stands in honor of one woman's extraordinary gift, seeing the person, not the problem. The construction took 6 months. James visited the site every week, making sure every detail was perfect. He thought about Hannah constantly during this process, how humble she was, how she would probably be embarrassed by all this attention, how she would insist she did not deserve it, but James knew she did deserve it. She deserved to be honored. She deserved to have her philosophy and her values preserved and shared. She deserved to know that her impact went far beyond one boy in a wheelchair. When the building was nearly complete, James faced a problem. How would he get Hannah there without making her suspicious? He could not just ask her to go to her neighborhood for a meeting. She would want to know why. He decided to use Minho. The boy was now walking short distances with his leg braces and cane. He could manage about 20 steps before getting tired. His progress continued to amaze the doctors. They said he had exceeded every expectation they had for his recovery. James told Minho about the secret project one evening. Minho's eyes went wide with excitement. "You built a whole center for Auntie Hannah?" "I built it to honor her," James corrected, "and to help other families like ours. Families who need hope and support and someone who believes in them." "Can I help with the surprise?" Minho asked eagerly. "Yes, I need you to invite Auntie Hannah to a special event. Tell her it is a community meeting in her neighborhood. Tell her you want to go with her because you want to see where she lives." Minho grinned. He loved being part of the plan. The dedication ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon. James invited everyone who mattered. Hannah's 3 adult children whom James had tracked down and brought in on the secret. Neighborhood residents who were told about the new center but not about Hannah's role in inspiring it. Disability advocates and social workers from across the city. Local politicians. And most importantly, families with disabled children who could benefit from the center's programs. James also had professional photographers and videographers ready. He wanted to capture Hannah's reaction to share with the world. He wanted people to understand that ordinary people could do extraordinary things, that wealth was not measured in money but in impact. That Hannah Kim, a former factory worker with no degrees or credentials, had changed lives through simple love and patience. The night before the dedication ceremony, James could barely sleep. He kept thinking about Hannah's face when she saw the building, when she saw her name, when she understood what he had done. Would she be happy, angry, embarrassed, overwhelmed? He hoped she would understand why he did it, not because he wanted to show off his wealth or make himself look good, but because the world needed to know about Hannah Kim. The world needed to see that real heroism often comes in quiet, humble packages. The world needed to understand that changing one life with love and patience was worth honoring. James got out of bed and went to his office. He wrote a speech for the dedication ceremony. He wanted to explain to everyone there what Hannah had done for his family. He wanted them to understand that this building was not just a community center. It was a monument to a philosophy. Hannah's philosophy. That every person deserves dignity. That small acts of love create miracles. That showing up consistently day after day changes everything. As the sun rose on the morning of the dedication ceremony, James felt nervous and excited. Today, Hannah would learn what he had been planning for months. Today, her name would be honored in her own neighborhood. Today, her legacy would be preserved in a way that would help families for generations to come. He just hoped she would forgive him for going behind her back. He hoped she would understand that some gifts are too important to refuse. He hoped she would see this center not as a monument to her, but as a tool to spread her message of love and dignity to everyone who walked through its doors. James smiled as he got dressed. In a few hours everything would be revealed, and nothing would ever be the same again. Saturday morning arrived with clear blue skies. Hannah woke up in her small apartment not knowing that this day would change her life forever. She made her simple breakfast and got ready just like any other day. At 10 o'clock, Minho called her. This was unusual. They usually saw each other during the week, not on weekends. "Auntie Hannah, can you take me to your neighborhood today? There is a community meeting, and I want to see where you live. Please?" Minho's voice was excited but also nervous. He was not a good liar, and he hoped Hannah would not ask too many questions. Hannah was surprised but pleased. "You want to come to my neighborhood?" "It is very different from where you live, Minho. It is not fancy. I do not care about fancy. I just want to see it. Can we go, please? Hana agreed. How could she say no to Minho? He had asked for so little over the years. If he wanted to see her neighborhood, she would show him proudly. An hour later, James's driver brought Minho to pick up Hana. She was confused about why James sent his car, but Minho explained his father wanted to make sure they were safe. Hana accepted this explanation, though she found it a bit strange. As they drove toward Hana's neighborhood, Minho kept looking out the window, barely able to contain his excitement. Hana noticed but assumed he was just curious about seeing a different part of the city. When they turned onto Hana's street, she immediately noticed something was different. There were balloons, decorations, crowds of people. A stage had been set up in the empty lot where the old factory used to be. What is happening? Hana asked, confused. I think it is for the community meeting, Minho said, trying to sound innocent. But as they got closer, Hana saw a large banner hanging between two poles. The banner made her heart stop. It read, Hana Kim Community Center, Grand Opening Celebration. Hana's hand flew to her mouth. What is this? The car stopped and the driver opened the door. Minho got out, using his cane to walk. He had practiced for this moment. He wanted to walk to the ceremony, not arrive in his wheelchair. Hana got out slowly, her legs feeling weak. She stared at the banner, unable to process what she was seeing. James appeared from the crowd. He was wearing a suit and smiling. Hello, Hana, welcome to your community center. My what? Mr. Park, what is happening? What have you done? Hana's voice shook. James took her hand gently. I did what you would not let me do with money or gifts. I found another way to thank you. Come, let me show you. Hana let James lead her through the crowd. Neighbors she had known for years were there, all smiling and waving at her. She recognized the mother who had complained about having nowhere for her children to go, the young man who needed job training, the elderly woman raising her grandson alone. They were all there and they were all looking at her with gratitude and joy. James led her to the front of the crowd. On the stage stood Hana's 3 children. Her daughter Ji-woo, her son Sung-min, and her youngest son Tai-ho. They were crying and smiling at the same time. Hana started crying too. She had not seen all 3 of her children together in months. They were all busy with their own lives. Mom, we have been keeping this secret for 6 months, Ji-woo said, coming down from the stage to hug her mother. It was so hard not to tell you. Tell me what? What is happening? Hana looked around desperately, trying to understand. James walked to the microphone on the stage. The crowd grew quiet. He cleared his throat and began his speech. 3 years ago, my son was in a terrible accident. The doctors told me he might never walk again. More than that, he had lost his will to live. He was angry, depressed, and refused all help. I hired the best therapists money could buy. None of them could reach him. I spent millions on equipment and treatments. Nothing worked. I felt helpless and hopeless. The crowd listened intently. Minho stood beside Hana, holding her hand. James continued. Then a woman with no medical degree, no fancy credentials, and no professional training knocked on my door. She had no right to be there. She had no resume to impress me. All she had was a handwritten letter and a heart that told her my son needed help. Against all logic, I hired her, and she changed everything. Hana's face was red. She was not comfortable being the center of attention. She tried to pull away, but Minho held her hand tighter. This woman did not try to fix my son, James said, his voice thick with emotion. She did not push him or force him or demand progress. She simply sat with him. She listened to him. She gave him permission to be angry and hurt and broken. And slowly, patiently, with more love than I knew existed in this world, she helped him find his way back to life. James pointed to Minho. 3 years ago, my son could not stand. Today, he can walk 20 steps with his leg braces and cane. But more importantly, he is happy. He believes in himself. He has hope. And that is because of Hana Kim. The crowd applauded loudly. Hana was crying so hard she could barely see. Her children surrounded her, holding her up. James waited for the applause to quiet down. I tried to thank Hana many times. I offered her bonuses and raises and gifts. She refused everything. She told me she was just doing what anyone would do. But I knew that was not true. What she did was extraordinary, and I realized I could not thank her personally because she would never accept it. So I found another way. James gestured to the building behind him. This is the Hana Kim Community Center. It was built with one purpose: to help families in this neighborhood the way Hana helped mine. Inside, you will find free programs for children, job training for adults, support groups for families with disabled children, activities for elderly residents, and so much more. This center will be here for generations, helping anyone who walks through its doors, and it will operate according to Hana's philosophy. Treat everyone with dignity, see the person, not the problem, and understand that small acts of love create the greatest miracles. The crowd erupted in applause again. Neighbors who had struggled for years were crying with joy. They had a place now. A place that would help them. A place that would support their families. James called Minho to the stage. The boy walked slowly, carefully, using his cane. Every step was an effort, but he made it. The crowd watched in amazed silence. When he reached the microphone, Minho turned to look at Hana. "Auntie Hana, I wrote you a letter," he said, pulling out a piece of paper. His voice shook, but he read clearly. 3 years ago, I did not want to live anymore. I was so angry at the world and at myself. I pushed everyone away. But you did not push back. You just sat with me. You told me it was okay to be angry. You made me feel like a person again, not just a broken body in a wheelchair. Minho paused, wiping his eyes. You taught me that being disabled does not mean being less. You taught me that I can still have a good life, even if it looks different than I planned. You taught me that people who truly care do not give up, even when things are hard. You saved my life, Auntie Hana. Not just my body, but my soul. And I will never forget that. Hana was sobbing now. Her whole body shook with emotion. Minho finished reading and walked carefully down the stage steps. He went straight to Hana and hugged her tight. The crowd gave them a standing ovation. People were crying openly. Even the photographers and reporters James had invited were wiping their eyes. Then James made an announcement. There is one more thing. Please follow me. He led the crowd to the front of the building. There, covered by a large cloth, stood something tall. James pulled the cloth away, revealing the bronze statue. Hana kneeling beside a child in a wheelchair, her hand extended in encouragement and love. Hana gasped. She walked closer to the statue, touching it with trembling fingers. It looked so real, so much like her and Minho during their early days together. The child's face showed trust. Her face showed patience and kindness. She read the plaque. Hana Kim, who taught us that the greatest miracles come from the simplest acts of love. Hana turned to James. I do not deserve this. I just did what my heart told me to do. Any good person would have done the same. James shook his head. No, Hana. Most people would not have done what you did. Most people would have given up. Most people would have focused on his disability instead of his humanity. Most people would have treated him like a patient instead of a person. You did something extraordinary, even if you cannot see it. Hana tried to protest again, but James continued. This center is not about making you famous or putting you on a pedestal. It is about preserving what you taught us. Every person who walks through these doors will be treated the way you treated Minho. With dignity, with patience, with love. That is your legacy. The crowd gathered around the statue. Children from the neighborhood reached out to touch it. One little girl in a wheelchair rolled up close and smiled. She looks nice, the girl said. Hana knelt down beside the little girl's wheelchair, just like she was pictured in the statue. What is your name? Sua. Hello, Sua. I am Hana. Would you like to be friends? The little girl nodded eagerly. And in that moment, James saw Hana's work continuing. She would help this child too, and many others. Not because she had to, but because that was who she was. The dedication ceremony continued with tours of the building. Hana walked through the rooms, amazed at everything she saw. The bright classrooms, the comfortable counseling rooms, the library full of books, the gym with special equipment for people with disabilities, the commercial kitchen for cooking classes, the computer lab for job training. In every room, staff members were ready to welcome families. Social workers, teachers, therapists, all trained to follow Hana's philosophy. James had made sure of that. He had interviewed every single person himself, explaining Hana's approach and making sure they understood it. Hana's children walked with her, as amazed as she was. Mom, Mr. Park told us everything you did for Minho, Jiwoo said. We always knew you were special, but we did not know the full story. We are so proud of you, Sungmin added. You spent your whole life helping others. You raised us alone after Dad died. You worked 2 jobs so we could go to school. You helped your neighbors whenever they needed anything, and you never asked for anything in return. You deserve this, Mom. You deserve to be honored. Young Teho, who Hana had spent years helping with his learning disabilities, said softly, "You never gave up on me, Mom. When the teacher said I was too slow, you taught me every night until I understood. You made me believe I could succeed. Now look at me. I have a good job and a good life. That is because of you." Hana hugged her 3 children tightly. She had done her best to raise them well despite everything. Seeing them grown and successful made everything worthwhile. As the afternoon continued, families began signing up for programs at the center. Parents registered their children for after-school tutoring. Young adults signed up for job training classes. Families with disabled children registered for support groups. Elderly residents signed up for social activities. The center was already filling with hope and life on its very first day. As the sun began to set, James found Hana sitting on a bench in the center's garden. She looked tired but peaceful. He sat down beside her. "Are you angry with me?" he asked. Hana smiled. "I should be. You went behind my back. You spent all this money. You made a big fuss about me when I do not like attention." "But," James prompted, "but I see those children signing up for tutoring. I see those parents finding support. I see that little girl, Su'a, in her wheelchair, excited about the programs here. And I understand why you did this. This is not really about me. It is about helping more families find hope." "It is about both," James corrected gently. "It is about helping families, yes. But it is also about honoring you. You gave my son back his life. You gave me back my son. How could I not do something to show the world what you did?" Hana looked at the statue visible from where they sat. "That is not really what I look like. The statue is too pretty." James laughed. "It looks exactly like you. Not your physical features, but your spirit, your kindness, your patience. That is what the sculptor captured." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and pink. Families were leaving now, promising to return on Monday when programs officially started. Everyone was talking excitedly about the new center and what it would mean for their community. "Thank you," Hana said finally, "for letting me help Minho, for trusting me when no one else would have, for seeing past my lack of credentials to who I really am, and for this." She gestured to the building and garden. "No," James said firmly. "Thank you. You taught me that the most important things in life cannot be bought. You taught me that love and patience are more powerful than money. You taught me that every person deserves to be seen and valued. Those are lessons I will never forget." Minho appeared, walking carefully with his cane. He had been touring the building with Hana's children. "Auntie Hana, did you see the room they named after you? It is the main support group room for families with disabled children. It has your name on the door." Hana laughed through fresh tears. "Another surprise?" "There are plaques all through the building," James admitted, "with quotes from you, things you said to Minho over the years. Small steps are still steps forward. Being different does not mean being less. The strongest people are those who try again after falling. Your words will inspire everyone who comes here." Hana shook her head in amazement. She had never thought of herself as wise or special. She just tried to be kind and patient, but somehow that had been enough. More than enough. As they prepared to leave, neighbors came up to Hana one by one. They thanked her. They hugged her. They told her how much this center would mean to their families. Hana accepted their thanks with humility, still not quite believing this was all real. James drove Hana, Minho, and Hana's children back to the mansion for a celebration dinner. Sujin, James's ex-wife, joined them. She and James were not back together, but they had become friends again through their shared love for Minho. She hugged Hana for a long time. "You did what I could not do," Sujin said. "You stayed when I ran away. You helped my son when I was too broken to help him myself. You are a better mother than I ever was." "No," Hana said firmly. "You are his mother. You carried him, birthed him, raised him for 8 years. You loved him the best way you knew how. The accident broke you too, but you came back. You are here now. That is what matters," Sujin cried and thanked Hana again. During dinner they all shared stories and memories. Minho told embarrassing stories about his early resistance to Hana's help. Hana's children shared stories about their mother's endless patience with them growing up. James told them about his plans for the center, including additional programs he wanted to add over time. "I want this center to grow and evolve, James said. As the community's needs change, the center will change. But the core philosophy will always stay the same. Hannah's philosophy: dignity, patience, love. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, James stood on his balcony looking at the stars. He thought about the journey of the past 3 years, the despair he had felt when Minho was first injured, the helplessness of watching his son suffer, the miracle of Hannah walking into their lives, the slow, beautiful transformation of his son from angry and broken to happy and hopeful. He thought about money and what it could and could not buy. It could not buy hope. It could not buy love. It could not buy the patience Hannah showed his son every single day, but it could build a center that would spread that hope and love and patience to hundreds of families. In that way, his wealth had finally served a worthy purpose. Inside the house, Minho was already asleep. He was dreaming about the future, about continuing to get stronger, about maybe going back to school full-time, about helping other kids with disabilities just like Auntie Hannah had helped him. He was dreaming about a life full of possibilities, not limitations. And across the city in her small apartment, Hannah was also thinking about the future. She was thinking about all the families she would meet at the center, all the children who needed encouragement, all the parents who needed support, all the elderly people who needed companionship. Her heart was full. She looked at a photo of her late husband on her dresser. "Did you see what happened today?" she whispered. "I just tried to help one boy, and somehow it turned into all of this. I hope you are proud." She felt somehow that he was. The Hannah Kim Community Center opened officially the following Monday. It was packed from the first hour. Over the next months and years, it would touch thousands of lives. Children would learn and grow there. Adults would gain skills and find jobs. Families with disabled children would find support and hope. Elderly residents would find community and purpose. And at the center of it all, literally and figuratively, stood the statue of Hannah, kneeling beside a child. Every person who entered the building saw it. Every person was reminded that great change comes from simple love, that miracles happen when someone takes the time to truly see another person, that the most important things we can give each other are patience, dignity, and hope. Hannah continued working with Minho for 2 more years, until he was 12 and walking independently with just a cane most days. Then she transitioned to working at the community center full-time, where she could help even more families. But she still visited Minho regularly, and they remained close for the rest of their lives. Minho eventually became a disability rights advocate, inspired by Hannah's example. He fought to change how society viewed and treated people with disabilities. He gave speeches at conferences and wrote articles for magazines. He always credited Auntie Hannah with teaching him that disability was not the end of dreams, just the beginning of different dreams, and the bronze statue stood watch over it all, a permanent reminder that sometimes the greatest monuments we can build are not made of stone and metal, but of love and service. That one person with a generous heart can change the world, one small act of kindness at a time. That Hannah Kim, an ordinary woman who did extraordinary things, would never be forgotten.